Yeah.
Let's get this started. Good stuff. So we have some people arriving now. I can see Breed, Elizabeth, Julia, Tafika arriving. Another Elizabeth. Elizabeth's going to be a popular name today. Good morning, everyone, as you join us. Here they all come in. Wonderful stuff, wonderful stuff. We can't see you, we can't hear you because we're using a webinar platform, but here I am waving. Feel free to wave back. So thank you as you join us. Good to see people still coming on into the room. We'll just give it a minute or two because if your MHFA course was anything to go by, not everybody gets here bang on the dot. So we'll just give it till 11:03 and we'll get started. Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth's the first to suss out that you can say hello in chat. And Fabiola's got a hand up. Hey, Kemi, hey. Hi, Rob. Yeah, get that chat going. Why not? Good stuff, good stuff. You see what a lovely chatty group these people are, Mr. Harley. So good, good. Everyone's coming on in. For those of you that remember him, we've got Rob in the room as well. Rob's sitting alongside you guys in the audience today. Pressure off him. Hey, Julia. Hey, Vilma. See your hands up. Good to see you. If you've not ever been on a Zoom webinar before, as you look around, you'll notice things are a little bit different. So yeah, do use that chat box. We've already got 20 things in chat, which is fantastic to see. Notice also, please, there's a Q&A button. There's a question button down the bottom. So we have got time for questions at the end of today. If there's a question in your mind, by all means, shove it in there. You don't need to sit there with it thinking must remember, must remember. So it's a useful little feature. If you've got any questions, pop them in there. With all of these webinars, we tend to find there are two different types of people. Some people like, it's like watching a film, like to sit and just take in what's being said. If that's what you like, go ahead and do it. Some people, and I'm thinking of my missus here, watching a movie, all she wants to do is natter about it. That's absolutely fine as well. So if you want to do that, jump in chat and have a chat. Good to see a nice lot of conversation going on already. So we've still got potentially another few people to join us. So I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds. Thank you all ever so much for finding the time to be here today. And happy World Mental Health Day for yesterday. We figured it wouldn't be a good idea to run this on a Sunday. That might have been just asking you to go a step too far. So you'll see that we have 3 panelists here today. Myself, and I'm going to do most of the talking, would you believe? Thomas, the chief exec of Set UK, plus a familiar face who's going to join us in a little while. So our attendance is well over half of those who we were expecting. So I suggest, Thomas, I think we'll get underway. Let me just bring up the schedule for this little session, and then I'll hand over to Thomas. So welcome all to this one-off event to celebrate World Mental Health Day and to invest some time in your own professional development, you mental health first aiders. What are we going to do? Thomas is going to say hi in a moment. I'm going to do some reflections on the year we've just had. We're going to revisit the stress container, and I'm going to ask you to take your stress container to a whole new level. Then we will have our guest speaker. When our guest speaker is done, I want to show you the forum we're launching today as a way for you all to manage your professional development and stay in touch with each other. Then we've got these 3 awards to give out. When we've given those out, any questions that are waiting in the Q&A, any questions anyone wants to come off of mute and ask, we'll deal with them. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Thomas.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So as Kev said, my name is Thomas and I'm the CEO of Set UK. Thanks, Kevin, for putting this on. It's a great event. It's a bit of a celebration, really, because we have trained over the last year over 200 people in mental health first aid, and off the back of World Mental Health Day, it's a great time to be able to do it. And we're a bit unique, really, because I'm not aware of any funding through adult learning in any other local authority, I could be wrong, that has actually funded mental health first aid. So we need to congratulate the Lambeth Council on choosing to put funding towards such an important thing. And when we looked at doing this last year, we weren't sure whether something like this could be funded, and Lambeth Council were very keen to dedicate some budget towards this. So thanks, Lambeth Council. We decided to do it off the back of the pandemic. We could see how much, I mean, it's been a stressful time for everyone over the last 18 months, but it's been particularly stressful for people that are predisposed to mental health disorders or have experienced mental health disorders before. And so what we felt was we wanted to create a community or a little army of a positive army of people in the community that could support as this problem becomes more and more prevalent in the community. So we feel like we've done that with 200 people, and we hope to train over this year close to, I think, 200 people more, so that you can continue to support your communities, whether that's in work or in local charities or voluntary sector bodies. So yeah, I think that it's still very, very much an issue that needs to take centre stage. I just saw a report that came out from St John's Ambulance that said that 40% of people are considering leaving their employment because of mental health issues or disorders, and 25% of people are feeling that their well-being has been affected by their place of work. So it's very much still centre stage, and what we're doing by training a lot of mental health first aiders, we're helping provide some type of positive response to that. So today is about congratulations to you all for going through that. You are really helping your community by doing so, and also, as Kev said, getting a little bit of extra professional development so that you feel a little bit more skilled to still continue the good work. All right, thank you, guys.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you very much, Thomas. Yeah, just to echo what Thomas has said, I work all around the country. I've never known a council fund this course. And as I said to most of you when you first started the training, if you ring MHFA England and say, I want to do this course, it's £300 to do this course. So real big kudos to them for investing in this. Good stuff. Okay, so let's get stuck into the agenda. I want to spend a few minutes just thinking about the year we've had, because this training could have been funded at any time in our lifetime. But what a huge time to do this course. You've all done this course during a period in history that will be talked about in centuries to come. And I just want to spend a few minutes thinking about that and thinking about its impact it is already having and what you might be able to do as mental health first aiders to help our society. So 567 days since lockdown was commenced, 23rd of March 2020, 567 days. And over the weekend, I was doing some maths on this. It's actually my birthday a week today. And I know I don't look it, but I'm going to reach the ripe old age of 55. I'm going to be old enough to draw down 25% of my pension. How old do I feel? And I did the maths on that. That means old Kev over on the left, I'm now about 20,000 days old. And then as you can see, I looked at some other ages, 40, 30, 21, 16-year-old and 11-year-old. How many days have we been alive over on the left there? Then some simple maths when, okay, if it's been 567 days, what percentage of our lives have been spent in lockdown? And this is the set of numbers that I came up with, this red line. And if you take that red line and read the percentages on the right, what you can see is that this old boy, 55 next Monday, actually nearly 3% of my life has been spent in lockdown. Nearly 3% of my entire life. And as you can see, obviously, the less time someone's been on this planet, the larger a percentage of their life has been spent in lockdown. And I want to pay particular attention to those two numbers on the right-hand side. A 16-year-old has spent 10% of their life in lockdown. 10% of their entire life. And then an 11-year-old, because the stat I've got for you with an 11-year-old is that 1 in 7 days of their life have been in lockdown. So statistically, for every week that young person's been alive, they spent one of those days of that week in lockdown. So just the length of time brings impact. My favorite phrase throughout all of lockdown was created by this British author called Damien Barr. We're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And I think all the things us mental health first aiders need to get our head around in current times is that we're all in a different set of situations. Yes, you all know about frame of reference, and you know everybody's got their own unique frame of reference. But beyond frame of reference, everyone's situation is unique. Therefore, different people have had a number of different challenges during these 567 days. Last year, we delivered a lot of webinars that we called the Dickens Perspective. And we called it that because of A Christmas Carol. The potential mental health challenges of COVID and lockdown come from the past, the present, and the future. And just to name check what I think are the key challenges that different people might face due to their past, their present, their future. First of all, anybody who already had a mental health disorder, I can't say that it's guaranteed lockdown would have made it worse, but I can probably say it's guaranteed it wouldn't have made it any better. So chances are people with an existing condition, lockdown was not good for their mental health. Whether you've been working from home, furloughed, lost your job during lockdown, being away from the people and resources available in the workplace can have a damaging impact on our mental health. Plus, there are 5 what are known as latent benefits of work. 5 benefits to our mental health that being in work brings. So again, whether you were working from home, furloughed, or unemployed during lockdown, you're detached from the workplace and detached from those 5 areas of mental health benefit. In terms of what's going on in the present that might be affecting someone's mental health, well, each week we've got more people who have been personally impacted by COVID. It might be that they have had it themselves and all of the mental health distress that they felt during that time. It might be that their children have had COVID, their parents have had COVID, they might have lost someone through COVID. So that horrible disease could have caused poor mental health. Of course, during lockdown, we all had to become far more detached from the people around us, and we're social creatures by design. Lastly, under presence, for some people, being at home every day is not an ideal place to be. Again, whether working from home, furloughed, or out of work. Being at home maybe in too small a space, maybe with other people trying to get things done, maybe with children not at school, horrible neighbours. It can be a distracting place. And for some people, it can actually be a hazardous place. I'm thinking particularly of people with addictions, people with eating disorders, people who self-harm. The workplace is often an escape from those habits that they haven't had. And then thinking of the future, what challenges are there to our mental health? People are worried about, what if I do get the virus? I don't know about you, but when I go out now, I'm seeing a lot more people acting very flippantly. It's been a year and a half and I haven't got it, so I'm not going to get it now. And that's going to be the easiest way for this thing to come flying back at us. Some people are worried about returning to work, whether it's getting a new job, returning from furlough, returning from working from home. What safety measures will there be in the workplace that keep me free of the virus? Plus, some people are worried about, how am I going to sort my life out to enable me to go back to work? Will there still be spaces in my childcare provider? What if I've got adult caring responsibilities? Will my dog walker even still be in business? So we can see that different people will have a range of different reasons why their mental health has been challenged. As mental health first aiders, we need to look out for this and provide the right support. Remember, we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. Why have I put a donkey on the screen? This image represents a model called Buridan's ass. And Buridan's ass is a model used to describe what ambivalence is. So the whole idea of Buridan's ass is you've got this hungry donkey standing in the field, or sitting in the field with his arms crossed. And he's got two bales of hay in front of him. They look exactly the same as each other. They smell exactly the same. They're exactly the same distance apart from him. So there's nothing key that will make him choose left or right. So he can't decide, and he stands there and he starves to death. This whole point about ambivalence, and you can see the labels I've put on this one. We may well have ambivalence as being the key thing we're presented with. I want to stay at home where my safety net is. I haven't caught the virus, therefore home is the place I want to stay. But I also want this sense of normality to return. I want to be seeing people again. I want to be working again. I want to be socializing, enjoying myself again. And people are getting trapped between those two without a single factor strong enough to have them choose. In terms of what specific issues we're likely to see, 4 groupings for you. First of all, let's think about mood. Some people will present with an understandable low mood. Thanks to everything that's been going on with COVID and lockdown, their life might suck somewhat at the moment. But we're not going to label it a mental health disorder because we're confident that as their life improves, so will their mood. But just because it's only a natural low mood doesn't mean that they don't need help. Some people, bottom bullet point there, will present with depression. And yeah, we want to apply algae. We want to encourage them to get the appropriate help. But there's also that middle group that I want you to really think about. People with subclinical mood issues, i.e. they've got some of the symptoms of depression. It is an abnormal low mood, but they haven't got enough symptoms to actually get a diagnosis. And of course, if I can't get a diagnosis, I can't access treatment. So let's make sure we're particularly looking out for people who are struggling but don't meet the criteria. I think anxiety is a very interesting subject for where we are at the moment. Some people's general levels of anxiety have taken a right battering with everything. Now, Will we have Quality Street at Christmas? I mean, my God, what is society? So let's keep an eye out for people who are struggling with anxiety as a general subject. Yes, I mentioned earlier, some people are getting very anxious about COVID and the chances of them catching it, their children, etc. The other two are specific anxiety disorders that we don't really cover on mental health first aid. We're only allowed to cover what's in the manual. But I think they're both worth a real big name check. Separation anxiety disorder. Although it's mostly found in children, anyone can develop it. And as its name suggests, this person gets extremely anxious at the thought of breaking away from their current support. So often that's a parent to a child, but it can be separating myself from my safe home environment. Secondly, social anxiety, which is also known as social phobia. And I'm expecting us to see a lot of this in the next year or two. At its heart, what social anxiety is an irrational fear that I'm going to embarrass myself in front of other people. I'm expecting to see quite a lot of people who feel really reluctant to re-engage with social circles. Let's please keep an eye out for that and apply algae. The third category, let's watch people's coping strategies. Some people, having lived at home for so long, will have developed certain habits that aren't necessarily healthy. It might be that they're eating the wrong kind of diet. It might be that their sleep hygiene is right up the wall. Let's encourage people to get those habits back to a healthy state. Some people might have developed unhealthy coping strategies, not getting enough exercise, eating the wrong stuff, having a drink every night. Let's make sure we're looking for this and encouraging people to replace them with more positive coping strategies. And then third on the list there, some people have developed some destructive coping strategies. Addictions, substance misuse, eating disorders, self-harm, I'd all bracket under there. Where people haven't had the workplace to turn to and they've been surviving in their own four walls, there's a greatened chance that these behaviours might be happening as a way of coping. Last category for you on this, just thinking about children for a moment. Go back to my pretty little chart I showed you. An 11-year-old has spent 1 in 7 days of their life in lockdown. Children have had a reduced amount of social development in the last year and a half. Please ensure that children are doing everything they can to catch up on those lost months. It's a key time in an adolescent's life. Similarly, learning skills, working memory, if they've not been fully engaged in school, if we can set tasks, fun tasks that get them using those skills and brushing off the cobwebs. And that last bullet point there, yes, I've put it under the children category, but potentially anyone. Being locked up for a year and a half, people turn to online habits, whether that's gaming, shopping, talking, and that can be a really hard thing for people to break away from. Please be on the alert for these things, because our goal is to take that donkey and help him to become a happy little donkey. The two things I want you to focus on doing with the people around you. Come back to my phrase again. So make sure, please, in the people you support in life, first of all, understand what their boat looks like. Understand how life is for them and the situations they're facing. Secondly, apply algae, provide the right information to enable them to get safely to shore. So that's just some thoughts on where we are at the moment. There was quite a bit of talking by me. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to have a 5-minute breather. In 5 minutes' time, I'm going to grab you again and we're going to talk stress container. Then our mystery guest will do their session. So stay logged on. Just be aware, nothing's going to happen on your screen for the next 5 minutes. 5 minutes' time, I'll kick off with stress container. I'll see you in 5. record button again. Just so you're all aware, we are recording this webinar. Now, obviously, you're not displayed on screen, so that your anonymity is preserved. Hopefully, you're all back in the room. We've had the first question, which I'll deal with now. We've had the question, can we still enter the competition, the 3 awards? Sadly, the answer is no. The nominations all went through huge scrutiny with a high-class scoring panel, and it's all been decided. But who knows what event we might run in the future. Okay, let's crack on then. I'm going to switch the subject now. I want to talk stress containers. Now, I know from the 21 courses we've delivered for Lambeth Council that the stress container is a very popular part of the training. My issue with the stress container is that I have to use the slides. Yes, we're all winners. Well said, Gillian. I have to use the slides provided to me by MHFA England. And I've got a couple of issues with them. So I couldn't resist using this as an opportunity to introduce you to our version of this, which takes it to a new level. The first thing to say about the stress container is we didn't used to call it a container, and anyone who did this course up to a year and a half, 2 years ago wouldn't know what you're talking about. It's got a far better name. Let's give it its old name. We always used to call it the stress bucket. And isn't that a better visual to keep in your mind? Let's just remind ourselves what the stress bucket is all about. We've all got our own threshold of how much stress we can handle. You might have a really small bucket, only a little amount of stress is needed for that bucket to fill. You might have a massive bucket that can take loads of stress. And throughout each and every day, stress flows into that bucket. And we talked on the course about this happening. If the amount of stress we're experiencing goes beyond our personal threshold, that bucket can overflow. And we talked about how some people become shouty, angry, crying, violent. Some people crawl inwards. It's never, ever a good place to be. So on the course, we talked about let's have a tap, a way of getting the stress out of our system, what we called coping strategies. And every single group I taught came up with some fantastic coping strategies that you use. Talking, listening to music, exercise, an occasional alcoholic drink, sleep, prayer, meditation. And we also talked about how some people have more harmful coping strategies. Things like drinking too often, substances, violence, self-harm. So I've got 2 tips for you to take your stress bucket to a new level that aren't part of the MHFA course. First of all, people often ask me, can you make your bucket bigger? Can you make it that you can handle more stress than currently? And I'm not sure we'll ever prove that robustly one way or another. What I can say is there's 3 things you can do to make your stress bucket as big as it can be. And here's those 3 tips. First of all, get enough sleep. Think about times when you've missed sleep, how you're rattier the next day, you're not as tolerant towards other people because your bucket shrunk. And just to be clear, the professional advice is that as an adult, we should have between 7.5 and 9 hours of sleep every night. I bet if we were all on camera and asked you to put your hand up if you do, far less than 50% of you currently get that. Maximize your bucket by sleeping enough. Secondly, make sure we're eating the right things, preferably not glazed donuts. You've all heard that saying, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, that's particularly true when we think of the mind and the nutrients it needs to function at its best. Again, think of when you've undereaten or maybe eaten a load of horrid stuff. You tend to be shorter with people. Your tolerance levels reduce, your bucket shrunk. Last tip for you is around staying well. When we're ill, our buckets shrink. Again, think back to a time when this has been you. So what I want you to do is live a life that promotes good wellness, but also if you do think there's something up with your health, do something about it early, please. So there's my 3 tips for maximizing the size of your bucket. Bottom line is sleep well, eat well, be well, please. My second tip for you, and this is the biggie for me. The stress bucket's a really good metaphor. My big issue with it is it talks about getting the stress out of your system, in which case you've had to experience the stress in the first place. So I think there's a stage that comes before that, which is about stopping yourself getting stressed in the first place. So advanced tip 2 is all about how can we put a lid on our bucket? How can we look to stop stress getting in or start choosing what stress we let in? And I've got 3 tips for you on how we might be able to do that. Ask yourself what stress you're letting in. This thing called proportioning and shifting your perspective. And I'm just going to speak briefly on each of these 3 things. First one, what stress am I letting in? Think about times in life when you stress about something that you've got absolutely no control over. Let's say you've pulled up at traffic lights, there's roadworks, and you didn't know they were there. And you're going to be late for that meeting and you start getting all wound up. All of that stress is useless stress. Turn around and go another way, or accept you're going to get through it when the time is right. And the really powerful little prose that we like to use here, I'm sure many of you have heard of it before, is what's known as the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept what I can't change, the courage to change what I can, and most crucially, the wisdom to know the difference between the 2 of them. Just a short bit of prose, but there's so much wisdom in that statement. Say again, how often we find ourselves stressing about something we can't do anything about, but also maybe shying away from changing the things that we can. So please always keep that in your head. Amazon and eBay are great sources for that on a nice little plaque to go on your wall. Only stress about what is worth stressing about. My mother-in-law has got a phrase, don't worry, worry until worry worries you. Second tip I gave you, proportioning. Now, when we talk stress, 2 things are really important. The stress that we generate and the thing that we're generating stress about. Proportioning is about using a scale like this. This is a simple 10-point scale. And asking yourself, first of all, this stressor in my life, this thing that I'm getting wound up about, how much does it matter? On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1, it doesn't matter. 10, it really matters. So my stressor, I'm going to move over there, 2 out of 10. Then use that same scale to think about how much stress you're generating. 1, I'm not stressing about it. 10, it's dominating my life. And decide where your stress goes. If those 2 numbers are, I would say, more than 2 digits apart from each other, you need to figure out which one's wrong. Look at the evidence. Don't get sucked into emotions. Look at the facts of life and say, actually, how important is this stressor? How much am I stressing? And by having these conscious thoughts, we influence that subconscious that creates the stress in the first place. So please do something of a stress audit after today. Look at your stresses and just use that scaling to figure out if there's any that you're over stressing about. Final tip on your lid, shift your perspective. 2 tactics to use here. And it's important because of this. Look at that word. What does that word say? Tell me in chat, please. What does that word say? What do you see? Don't try and be clever with me. Just tell me what you say. It's not a trick question. What word am I seeing in front of me? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now watch the magic that's about to happen on screen. I'm going to turn that word upside down. What word do you see on screen? Exactly the same word, isn't it? Owns versus sumo. Whole point is, depending on what angle we're looking at life through, we can see very different things. Owns versus sumo. So our perspective matters. And when we get sucked into our own stress, we tend to only adopt that perspective. 2 tips for you. Number 1, stand outside of life and say, okay, as a dispassionate stranger, as an objective thinker, what does this look like? Second one is the one I use on myself. If I'm stressing about something, I always ask myself, if this was a mate of mine, what advice would I give them? And that can just help us look at things from a different perspective. We can often find solutions that way. So I've given you a lid to go with your tap. Now you could say, Kev, which is the better tactic? Well, they're very different tactics for this reason. If you put the lid on your bucket, you're being proactive. You're stopping yourself getting stressed in the first place, which has got to be the better one. But stress does get in our bucket. And if it's good stress, we might even want it in our bucket. So we also need a reactive way of letting that stress out. So I want you to make sure, please, that you pay attention to both. There endeth my stress bucket rant. So hopefully you're all switched on still. We're 45 minutes in, we're at the halfway stage. Remember, if you've got any questions, you've got the Q&A section down the bottom. If you do want to chat, it looks like you're doing a pretty damn good job of it. Chat away. But the time's come now for me to hand over to our guest speaker, a familiar face. What have I got to tell you about our guest speaker? Well, there aren't many faces that I can say every one of you on this training will be familiar with. And I'm really, really pleased to say that this one you'll all recognise. Session 3 of the course, you looked at 3 subjects: anxiety, eating disorders, and self-harm. And every single course I deliver, people get really interested in one person's story. Not only do they get interested, they're always interested to know what's happening in that person's life now. So it gives me huge pleasure to say, all the way from Shrewsbury, we have Satvir, who you'll remember, you watched the video on her talking about her history of self-harm. So I'm going to very happily hand over to Satvir now and let her have a chat with you about how life is now. Satvir, over to you.
Oh, there you go. Classic issue there, Zoom problems. Massive apologies if any of you were waiting for some superstar. It is just me. Hi to everybody. Thank you so much to Kev for inviting me to deliver this short session. As he said, often, you know, I've heard it many a time from different MHFA instructors that my video, when I do a plenary, it tends to create a lot of conversation because I'm talking about quite a difficult topic, quite a taboo topic. So for me, I'm so pleased to be able to come and tell you guys a little bit about how I'm doing now. Some of the common questions I get asked is, what am I doing now? How's my daughter? And also just what could have helped me back then when I was really struggling. So I'm going to do it in reverse order. I'm going to tell you guys firstly about what could have helped me, and then I'll tell you how my daughter and I are both doing. Now, that video was filmed about 10 years ago. I've just seen that still. I've never actually watched it. I've done quite a few things for the media and organizations on video, and I don't watch them because they're really painful to watch. But yeah, that's 9-10 years ago, so quite a while ago. And at that time, I was still struggling with my mental health, but I'd come quite far, but it'd only been a few years since I'd last had treatment or been on medication or even self-harmed. When I get asked, one of the big questions I get asked is what changed? You know, what changed for you? How are you in the position that I am today? I'm now 39 years old and I do have a really good life, which I will share with you in a moment. But I can't turn around and say to anybody what changed was it was April the 27th, 2000 and thingy at 12:36 p.m. There wasn't a moment. It was when I was about 24 years old, a number of cogs in my life all came together at the same time. Because when we look at people's distress and stresses and what can lead to poor mental health, it's not often one thing. There may be one big thing, as society would call it, or it can be a number of things that have happened and accumulated. For me, it was the latter. There was a number of things that had accumulated over a period of time. Yes, society might say the abuse from my dad was a big thing, but I wasn't ready to deal with them. It took time. And I always relate it to like a tower of distress. So at the bottom, you've got the abuse from my dad and my childhood. But then, you know, I've gone through homelessness, domestic abuse, honor-based abuse, single teen mum, poverty, deprivation, isolation. So then you've got a big tower. And I think for as long as people kept focusing on the bottom part, and if we talk about her daddy issues, everything will be better, nothing really changed. And it was only as people started dealing with the top bits, and this is why I'm so pleased to be a part of Get Set and, you know, hearing about the work they're doing to get people into employment, is because as people started easing my stresses from the top, I'm on the right benefits, I'm back in college, I've made friends, I'm very gay, I came out, made friends from the gay community, started relationships, my daughter went to nursery. As these things started happening, my tower of distress started shrinking. Now, there was still distress, but it was more manageable. And then when I went into the therapeutic process, I was able to deal with the bottom of the tower, my dad, much more easily, instead of being sitting in a chair and someone's trying to talk to me about my dad and I'm thinking, where's my next meal coming from? How am I going to engage with my daughter tonight? Where am I sleeping? So for me, it was when people started tackling the top of the tower. And that happened when I was around about 24 years old. More things were in place. I've got stable housing, I've got friends, I'm in college, my daughter's settled, and all these things were happening. So I felt more able to engage in the therapeutic process. Going back earlier, what could people have done? I don't know, you know, I'd love to be able to say, oh, you know, if only somebody had asked me. But the truth is, I've passed that stage in my life now. And I know I hid things very, very well. I know there's always some potential signs and indicators, but for the time that I was going through my biggest traumas, mental health wasn't being spoken about as much as it is today. So it's much easier to hide things because people were less likely to be looking for them. What I can say is about 2.5 years ago, I did have a crisis and I really, really struggled with my mental health. And I ended up needing crisis support because I was extremely suicidal. And from that, what I learned was that what could people have done better is ask directly the question about suicide, about self-harm, about my mental health. And no, I didn't directly say to people, I'm feeling suicidal. I admit that until I got to that crisis point that I presented to services. But when I reached that crisis point, I look back, and that was May Bank Holiday 2019. I'd been feeling quite unwell and low since January. And I'd been doing things like messaging people, i.e. my siblings, saying things like, I feel really shit. I feel really low. You got any time for a chat? Or more often than not, it was, hi, you busy? And they'd say something like, oh, is it an emergency? I don't consider myself an emergency. I've got low self-confidence, low self-worth, low self-esteem at this point. So I just say no. And they wouldn't follow up. Oh, you're going to pop down this weekend? Oh, no, a bit busy unless you need me to. No, it's fine, I'd say. So I think if someone is saying these kind of things to you, to pick up on it a little bit more, because that might be someone's subtle way of reaching for support, because it's easier to say, hi, you up for a chat, fancy a coffee, than to say, I'm feeling really suicidal and I wish I was dead. I don't know what to do. I'm scared of being on my own. So I wish people had picked up on the subtle signs. And since I've said this out loud, my siblings do feel guilty, and I don't want them to feel guilty. It's not their fault. But moving forward, I hope that if I do message and say, you fancy a chat, they'll say, yep, I'll make some time X, Y, Z, instead of asking if it's important, because understanding, I'll often, as many people do, will dismiss a level of distress they're in. And more so, if you know someone is feeling low, feeling comfortable to ask around suicidal thoughts and self-harming. And don't say, are you self-harming? If you know someone's got a history of self-harm. I'm big on this. What's the point in asking that? If I say to you, I'm feeling really shit, you know, I've got a history of self-harm, and you ask me if I'm self-harming, and I say no, does that mean that I'm fine? Or does that mean that you're taking the measure of my distress as to whether I self-harm or not? So I always say in training that, say it like this: have you had any thoughts of self-harming, whether you have or haven't? Because I might say I haven't self-harmed, but I'm thinking about it, which will now show you I am in quite a high level of distress. And it might be taking a lot of energy for me not to be self-harming, and I'm putting into place all these coping mechanisms that I've taken over the years, but at any stage they may not be enough. When people say to me, I'm feeling really low, I make it a standard question. How low? I need to ask you this. Are you having suicidal thoughts? Asking doesn't lead to it. So please do feel comfortable in asking about it. So that's a bit about what could have helped and what can help in the future. In regards to what's going on now, and my daughter's going to be 21 in a few months. I won't lie, she's not had it easy. 5.5 years ago, my daughter was actually detained under the Mental Health Act. She went through her own mental ill health. She went through acute onset psychosis, but she struggled. She was suicidal. She tried to end her own life on a number of occasions, which led her to being sectioned. She spent 5 months in an acute psychiatric unit, was told not to do her GCSEs. And I didn't think at one stage my daughter would see 16 years old, let alone almost 21. My daughter got support much sooner than I did. I, as a parent, had to respect at times she wasn't ready for that support and give her the flexibility to engage when she needed to. But she got support, and now she's in her second year at university studying cancer sciences at Nottingham Uni. Sounds really clever, doesn't it? Apparently studying. She's got freshers flu at the moment. I keep telling her she's in her second year, but apparently it's contagious. But she's living the life she wants to live. She could still get ill again, but as a parent, what I've done is give her the tools and resources as to where to seek support if and when she needs it. Whether you're a parent, carer, friend, colleague, employer, that's what we're there to do, give people tools and resources and options. My daughter's really well at the moment, touch wood, and she's living her best life. And me, I'm doing fantastic. I'm probably the most excited person to be turning 40. I can't believe I'm going to be 40 soon. I am so excited. I'm 40 next year, and for me, I see it as a marker of potentially the first decade of my life where my distresses in life will be what I consider the average person's distresses. And that's what I want. I know that sounds ridiculous. I just want the normal, as society would call them, ups and downs. I want this to be the first decade where I'm not worried about housing, about money, any more so than the average person, about relationships. Because now, for the last 10 years, I've been delivering self-harm awareness training. I've got my own business doing that. And I'd consider it quite successful. I'm finally going international with my work. I'm going to Switzerland in a few weeks to deliver training, not just in schools. I was in Cinter Group dealership the other day, dealing to car salespeople. Mental health in the workplace is huge. And me, what I bring to it is talking about a taboo topic such as self-harm, because I need people to know it's not just a teenage issue. On top of that, I've got a secure home. I've just bought my first home just under a year ago, and it's absolutely stunning. I was saying to Kevin earlier, I can't believe I live here. It's huge, and and it's beautiful, and more importantly, it's mine. I've got engaged. I've got a wonderful fiance. We're getting married in 2 years. We're really happy, and more importantly, I'm happy. My life is stable and secure. So for me, I want to share with people that just because you're going through stress now or distress now or poor mental health, it doesn't mean things can't improve. But what we have to respect is the person has to be ready to engage with support. And there were periods in my life where I wasn't. But when I was, it was paramount that services were accessible to me. And if they're not accessible, it doesn't mean those around you can't support you. I'm not sure what else Kevin would like me to share or say, but Kev?
Satvir, thank you ever so much. And unfortunately, it's webinar format, so even if they are applauding wildly right now, you won't hear them.
No, I don't want applause. It creeps me out.
What I would say to everybody is a couple of things. First of all, we're very honoured to have Satvir here. She's a very popular person on the speaker circuit. And as she says, she's made an amazing success of attention seekers, her business. So thanks a million for being here, Satvir. She also said to me very early after I invited her, happy to deal with any questions. So if you've got any questions for Satvir, keep them in your mind or stick them down in the Q&A bit down the bottom. I've got a couple of bits more to show you, some awards to hand out. Then we're going to go to Q&A. And Satvir is one of those wonderful people where there probably isn't a question you can ask her that she'll be offended by. So this is an opportunity to ask any question, even if it's in your mind saying, oh, I don't know if I should ask this. We don't say who asked questions. So you can ask a question. Satvir can choose whether to answer it or not. But the one way to guarantee any question you've got doesn't get answered is by not asking it. Thank you, Satvir. We'll come back to you for questions in about 15, 20 minutes time. I can see lots of thanks coming through for you in chat. Great stuff. Okay, with our guest speaker finally there. Oh, also to say, follow her on Twitter. Her Twitter handle _Satvir Najjar, and you can see the spelling of her name now. She's no longer called Familiar Face. So do follow Satvir on Twitter, please. Okay, 2 more elements for you before we end this session. First up, it's been a year in the making, and that's largely my fault because I've let other things get in the way. As of today, we launch the Get Set UK Mental Health First Aider Forum. Here we go. So it's nothing spectacular, but what's most important is this thing now exists. You can see a web address down the bottom. Don't worry that it's shooting off. It will be back again in a moment. This is a forum we've created just for you guys. So it is only available to people who have done the MHFA through Get Set. It is free to register, free to use. It uses standard forum software. If you're an IT geek, it uses PHP BB as its programming language. It is there for you to use. So if you want to sign up for it, it's open to registrations as of now. Now, big point to make here, you can't just register and use it. I have to authorize you. So if I get a request through, the first thing I'm doing is checking the email address against my list of everyone who's been on this course. So if you've got multiple email addresses, I suggest you use the one that Get Set has got for you. It's not compulsory to join, but the whole idea of it is we'll post news articles on there. Any updates from MHFA England will go on there. We've got a little video corner on there. There's not a lot of content yet because it's just launching. But for instance, if you want to watch the Brené Brown empathy video again, it's there. If you want to watch a really good video about someone talking about her history of eating disorders, it's on there. There's even a video with me in it on there. I intend to post some blog articles on there. So have a look through those. And if you want to write a blog article around the subject of mental health, feel free to submit to me. Plus, there are resources available from MHFA England, but other resources that we think are really worth knowing about. Things like wellness action plans, you can get there. Now, I've had a question in Q&A asking for the email signature logo. I'm going to post it on the forum. So the person who asked that question, you're going to have to join the forum to get it. Do have a look. It's also an opportunity if you want to stay connected with anyone else you did the training with, if you want to get in touch with anyone you did the training with, if they're on there, you can connect with them. But we are being very strict about rules regarding contact details. Yes, when you set your username, it can be your name if you're happy for it to be so. But we must not have things like email addresses, telephone numbers put on that forum. We want to protect your privacy. So you will see there are a couple of rules, and those rules will grow over time. Do look to get connected with people you did the training with. I'll be on there. I'm the administrator of the forum. Come on over and join me. I'll also post up in the video section. I'll post the video of this webinar so you can watch it back if you like. Okay, so that just leaves the awards. The idea of these awards is we wanted to find out who has taken this MHFA training and done something with it. So we did two things here. First of all, you know, when we sent you out the email about this, we asked you if you'd like to nominate yourself, but we know that people are really shy. So in addition to that, if you're on a Get Set program, we also said to the advisors, is there anyone you'd like to nominate? So we have 3 awards to give out now. Each one of our awards winners today will receive a £50 Amazon voucher. No strings attached, spend it on as you will. And Thomas has generously donated that £150 from the Get Set Bank Vault. So without further ado, let's find out who our 3 award winners are and why. First up, award number 1. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Award number 1. Let me tell you a bit about this person. He's used the stress bucket model on himself and others and really taken that philosophy on board quite overtly. And this, being a man, is someone who didn't really talk about how he was feeling previously, but he's taken the whole philosophy of the course and really made himself speak out, which is a big step to take. Plus, his advisor was very impressed with how he's now really looking to psychoeducation, to use mental health related books for his own development. So congratulations to our first award winner, Mike Crumstets. Again, Mike, I'd love you to get a round of applause, but you wouldn't hear him anyway. So Mike, congratulations.
Congratulations, Mike.
Well done. Heartily deserved. Really turning around how you look at your own mental health. And most importantly, you'll remember on the course, I say on day 1, if all you do is use this course to improve how you look after your own well-being, it's time well spent. So well done, Mike. You will be getting your gift voucher today. Award number 2. Award number 2, the advisor nominated for someone who was low in self-confidence, came on the course, and I'm not saying as a result of the training, but I'd like to think the course was part of this, has developed a far more can-do, optimistic, positive outlook, to the point that she's now been offered a job, would you believe, in the field of mental health. So our congratulations go to Christine McDonald. Again, Christine, if we weren't all on mute, you'd hear raucous applause, but if you look in chat, people are clapping all over the place. So
Congratulations,
well,
Christine.
Congratulations. Your £50 Amazon gift voucher will be on its way to you today. final award, award number 3. The person that wins award number 3 actually got hit by COVID. COVID hit the family, but she really used the training to be able to focus on, I may be physically unwell, let me support my mental health during that time. Created, and I love this, a support wall of resources for use in an emergency, keeping it visible to know, keep focused on my mental health and help is there if I need it. Not only that, but her family have been through some very troubling times lately. And she used the whole stress container, stress bucket model to not only help herself, but her family within that as well. So award number 3 goes to Gillian Blackwood. Congratulations, Gillian.
Congratulations, Gillian.
Can you hear all that applause? You can see it in chat, even if you can't hear it out loud. So well done, Gillian. Your Amazon gift voucher will be on its way to you today. So well done, the 3 award winners. The one thing I say on that is let's make absolute sure that we've got the right email address to send it to. So what I'd ask the 3 award winners to do is make sure you've got chat open and you see down the bottom your opportunity to type a message in. Above that, it says to everyone. Change that to me and just send me your email address, please. And we'll make sure that that's where your gift voucher gets sent. So all 3 of you, please send your preferred email address to me. Well done. I say it at the end of most courses, but I'll say it again. I think a lot of training you go on, afterwards you go back to normality and that training becomes just a happy memory. There are a few courses that when you finish it, you go, right, I'm going to do stuff differently now. And this very much is one of those courses. So you 3 winners, thank you ever so much for not just applying yourself to the learning, but applying the learning to yourself. Well done. I want to bring up one more visual before we hand over to questions and anything you want to know from me, Thomas, Satvir, each other. The final slide I'll give you. I know you're all desperate to have the algae animation one more time. I'm sure you've missed it since the course finished. So here we go, but then I'm going to show you a slightly modified algae. Here it is. Enjoy it while it lasts. God, you've missed that. Please notice I've kept the opening words the same, but this is all about applying algae to yourself. So please make sure you're approaching your well-being daily. Listen to yourself. Your mind and body give all the clues you need to understand whether you need help or whether you're doing well. Every day, take time out, please, to meet your mental health needs. Grow your resilience, grow hope for the future. And you've heard a very inspiring story from Satvir today, and that message she told you, someone going through the toughest of times can still have a wicked future. So make sure that you are developing that within yourself and looking to enjoy the ride. So we'll deal with any questions now. After that, if you want, I'm going to put a link in chat actually, rather than that one down the bottom. If you want, once we've dealt with questions, I'm going to open a normal Zoom room where if you want to come in and have a natter, you're free to do so. If there's anybody else here that you want to natter with, we can send you into breakout rooms as well. So the delivery done. Ms. Nijar has returned on screen. So I've got some questions in already. How can I access the logo? I'm going to put it on the forum and you can get it from there. Where is the link to the forum, please? Okay, so let me just put that in chat now in case you didn't manage to get it while it was showing. It's getsetnetwork.co.uk. Check I've spelt that right. Yes, I have. And then would you mind us resharing your blog content or anything useful? I'm trying to encourage mental health on LinkedIn. Absolutely. Look, I think Satvi is a great example of this. You can take what you know and give it to people who buy it off you and keep the door shut on it, in which case, great, you might save a few people. Or you can say, be a messenger, echo this story, change the world. So yeah, absolutely. Anything we're sharing on the forum, elsewhere, feel free to share.
I think I saw a question asking if I thought mental health was genetic after my talk. So currently there's been no gene to be like the mental health gene that has been found, but there has been some research that shows there can be a link. So if someone, a biological parent, for example, has got a mental illness, you as their child are more likely to suffer from a mental illness. And I think if it is in a family, there is vulnerability. So potentially it's something to do with genes, chemicals, etc. But there's no genetic link. When I look at my, from research, that genetic gene, but I look at my daughter and I don't think I caused my, I'm not saying anybody implied this, I caused my daughter's mental illness. Because I have had people say that, do you think she's ill because you were ill? I think it's more so, my mental illness is very clear. I was abused. I've gone through a shit life. That's what led me to struggle with my mental health. My daughter was hearing voices, you know, which wasn't triggered by anything. She just got very unwell. And I think it's important to remember that some people can get ill, but very often there is a trigger. But some people are more vulnerable to it. Just like someone might be more vulnerable to breast cancer or a heart attack, etc. And that can be a combination of lifestyle and genetics. So I think that's how I would answer that question. But it's not all doom and gloom, you know.
I'm not surprised that question came up, Satvi, because having never watched your own video, let me tell you, one of the things that almost always comes out of it is the nature versus nurture conversation.
Okay.
And because one of the very first things that we hear you say in that video is about you growing up with your mum trying to kill herself, etc.
Yep.
It always opens up that conversation of, was Satvi given the defective gene, or did she grow up in a terrible household and mental ill health was almost inevitable?
I think, yeah, I think it's, you know, I didn't know I said that, but yeah, you know, I have grown up with a mother threatening to jump off Trent Bridge all my life, but then I've grown up in abuse that was leading my mother to have them thoughts. So maybe having that, hearing that, growing up constantly made it more so an option for me when I was going through that distress, because I've seen someone saying that's how they're going to manage their distress. But again, I don't know, because to my knowledge, nobody in my family had self-harmed. Yet, you know, I was self-harming. So it's really difficult. And in today's society, you know, with social media, I hear it all the time, young people, they're self-harming because of TikTok. You know, young people self-harming way before TikTok, and adults self-harm too. You know, and older adults over the age of 65 are 3 times more likely to die by suicide within a year of self-harm. And that's higher than any other age group. And I think it's important to remember there are many factors that can lead someone either becoming suicidal or self-harming. But to my knowledge, the common one is distress, where you get the idea from. Sometimes you don't even know, it can be on a subconscious level.
And something that's come up a couple of times in groups, so I doubt most of the learners have heard this before. On a similar vein, I grew up in a little sleepy village in Kent. We had one black kid at school. His name was Stephen Walcott. And I'm hopeless with names, yet nearly 55-year-old me will always remember Stephen Walcott's name. And because I never really had exposure to any non-white people,
yeah,
colour of skin is irrelevant to me. It's about the same relevance as your shoe size. Yeah, I went to an MHFA instructor networking event a couple of years ago, and I had a fellow instructor explaining that his dad was racist because he grew up in a sleepy village where there were no coloured people. And there is that whole thing, we cover it when we look at CBT. 2 people can go through an identical situation, yet come out of it with very different attitudes towards it.
Yeah, and I don't think, you know, obviously, you know, this year's Mental Health Awareness Day is all about equality for all. I look at my journey, and sometimes, not saying this is what you're implying at all, you know, I've grown up in a white part of Nottingham, you know, very middle class, very few Asians, white school. You can spot me a mile off on the school photo. There's like 5 non-white faces in there. But and I always say this in training, my journey, my issues aren't down to me being British, Asian, Indian, Sikh, a child of immigrants, or a woman. But all them things that I've just ticked off there were barriers to me seeking support. They didn't create my issues. For someone, it can be an issue, their race, their religion, their culture is the trigger for them. But often it is a barrier to accessing support because of the inequalities we have. But on top of that, I've grown up in a culture where you don't talk about things. It's dishonoring your family. It's bringing shame, which are very cultural things. So I think, when you're coming across someone from a different group to you, whichever box that is, sexuality, gender identity, race, religion, culture, immigration status, etc., it's about not going, that's why they've got their issues, but asking them if at all them issues are impacting them. And I think, that's important to be mindful of.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Quick one that I can answer. How do you become an MHFA trainer? So MHFA England deliver a 7-day instructor program. They're currently not taking applicants unless it's to deliver within your own organisation, because there's about 4,000 instructors now. But do be aware, anyone can apply when they take applications. It costs just under £3,000 to do. So MHFA England website, down the bottom, you'll see a link to become an instructor. Satvir, you have a question in chat.
Okay.
How was your experience with your daughter, this being a stressful event? How did you support yourself? And how would you advise someone to support themselves when they don't know much about mental health in general?
So when my daughter was poorly, is that what that question's about? So how did I support myself when my daughter was poorly?
Yeah, how did you support yourself? And how would you advise someone who is supporting someone else?
Yeah.
And they don't know much about mental health in general.
So how did I support myself? I'm all about honesty, me. I really didn't. I just focused on, I need to help her, sort her out. And I won't deny it because it was my child. My work went out my head, fix her. And I would take her to all her appointments, go and visit her in hospital, run around doing all these things. My daughter went through an exclusion at school for the wrong reasons, fight in that case. Then she's in a PRU referral, everything like that. I'm just focused on doing that and then going to work, doing that and going to work. And I really didn't look after myself, hence why I had the big crash 3 years later. But now I'm much better. And one of the best things I did, especially as my daughter started getting better, was make sure I had people I could talk to. And it was only a couple of people, and one wasn't even my other half, because I struggled to do that because I was worried that they might see her less than what she was, because we'd only got into the relationship and think badly of her. But I had a couple of friends, one in particular, Debbie, who I could go to and she wouldn't ask questions. She was my safe space. And knowing there was somewhere safe I could go. And if I wanted to say things like, I hate her, i.e. my child, which is an awful thing to say about your daughter or anybody, is not nice. But sometimes I needed just to get this anger and frustration out, because when it's someone you care about, often them emotions are there. So having somewhere safe to say them kind of things. If you're supporting someone, one of the biggest things that I learned was it's giving them space. You might be ready to provide all the support in the world, but they may not be ready to engage with it, which can become very frustrating. And that's where me and my daughter clash. I'm finding money. I wasn't financially stable at that point to throw into a therapist because a CAMS waiting list is too long, and I'm dragging her to therapy and she's going, but she's not engaging. I'm shouting at her to go to appointments, taking her, crying in my car, like banging on the window. I mean, it was bad, running away from appointments. I'm getting angry at her and would shout at her. And I know I'm not painting myself in a good picture, but I am just being honest. I wanted to make it better. I now know. And for as long as I was doing that, we clashed and we got nowhere. Both of our health deteriorated. But then I stepped back and I realized that this isn't working. So instead I asked her what she wanted. And at that moment, it was things like, don't keep telling me to tidy my room, I've got enough on. And I know that sounds pathetic, but that was one less thing off her stress tower. And stop asking me if I'm okay 70,000 times a day. Just ask me once, and do little things. I'll tell you when I'm ready for therapy. What she wanted was me to give her the options. So I think how to support someone, be honest with them, tell them, I'm worried about you. I'm here if and when you need me. Is there anything I can do to make it better or help you feel better? And that might be something like having a coffee, but that doesn't mean you have to talk about what's going on. You can just have a coffee, because what you're doing is to you nothing, but to the person, they're not on their own. They're not being ignored. They're not invisible. And they know you're there, and it can take time to build up that conversation, which I may never have with you, but at least I know you're there and you're my safe space, and that's giving me purpose. Does that kind of answer it? Can I share something? I want to share a picture of me and my kid, because I think, yeah, is that all right, Kev?
Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, see, I just think that people need to see that things are all right. So the one in the blue coat is the fiance. The one in the grey coat is my kid, Zaina. And the one in the red coat is my sister, who thinks she's my kid. So even though she's 30, she thinks she's our child. So just to show you, and this picture is not lying like many pictures do. This is genuine happiness. And, we are, really good. Because sometimes we don't see that people are doing all right. And I want people to know that, you know what, we are. But I might get ill again tomorrow. But it's okay, because over time, I know where to go for support if and when I'm ready.
Yeah, I think two big things from that. Number one, Satya saying that having a friend who isn't there to ask questions, but just to shut up and let you rant is a really nice point. And of course, on the course, we talk about non-judgmental listening, but we're also saying ask, 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 ask. Sometimes the greatest support you can give is to not ask. And the second big point to make on that is, did you see the size of Satya's kitchen? She has a massive kitchen. She showed it to me before you guys turned up.
He has to see it.
My garden.
I do feel very fortunate. I've gone from homelessness and all sorts to a house that I do have imposter syndrome in, but hopefully I will also, just to point out, without the other half, I'd probably just own the garage. But I'm very happy. This is the first time in my entire life I have chosen where I live, who I live with, and where I live. And I think that's a big thing when it comes to mental health, having choice. That's what it is. I had choice about who I spoke to, when I spoke to them, how I spoke to them. And now I've got more choices in my life. And that's how I know my mental health's improved, because I'm in more control over what happens to me and what I do.
Fantastic.
I feel like a group hug, Kev.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay,
thank you for the lovely comments.
We're 5 or so minutes away from the end. So any more questions while you've got sat there?
You can be as nice as you want. I think one question that often comes up is, what happened to your parents? Parents are divorced. I think I mentioned that in the video because they would have been divorced then. They've been divorced for about 20, how old's my kid? Yeah, about 21, 22 years now. My so-called dad, and that's what I see him as, I have nothing to do with him, has got remarried and is abusive to his new wife. I have a half brother who's 11. My mum is very angry, bless her. She's from the generation that wouldn't have therapy or anything like that. So she struggles. Our relationship is like a roller coaster, but I've learned to ride it. And I think that's what therapy taught me. Instead of trying to make it a smooth ride, that's what I thought it was, or a log flume, it's now got its ups and downs, and I just stay on the ride because I've lowered my expectations of what I expect from her. Instead of trying to change her, I've changed me. She hasn't congratulated me on the house, the engagement. I don't know if she's coming to the wedding or any of these things, but I'm actually all right with that. Of course, I'm a little bit sad, but I'm not suicidal or self-harming or crying about it, because over time I've been able to manage my emotions, deal with them stresses. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Anything else for Satya while you've got her? I'm just seeing loads of congratulations in there,
And kitchen envy. Can I just say I don't even use it? It's my other half who cooks. I just wanted a table. My aim was to have a kitchen table to sit around, because I've never had that. So I like it when we have guests and we sit around a table. So
number one, she does all the cooking. Number two, she pays for the vast majority of the house.
No, we pay equal.
You only pay for the garage.
I do, but no, we do pay equal. It's just the cooking. I hate cooking. It bores me. because food's never been a social thing for me. And I've got a Spanish fiance. They sit around the table for like 3 hours, and I'm like, clean up, guys, clean up. So I didn't get it, but it's nice.
Right, look, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, only more words of praise to Satvir. So I'm going to wrap up the webinar. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to open a normal Zoom room. If you want to come in and say hi and put your camera on, put your mic on and actually speak, don't feel obliged to, but I'm going to pop over there for half an hour. So if you want to come and join me in this Zoom room, come over and join me. Let me close by, first of all, thanking Satvir for finding time to do this. I know how busy she is, and she's had this in her diary for a while, and really kudos to you, Nijar. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Your honesty is always well and truly respected. And then secondly, congratulations to our 3 winners. Look forward to your gift vouchers arriving today. Well deserved. Thirdly, thank you all for turning up. It was great to have. We've never done an event like this before. Didn't know how it was going to go. Thank you for not just turning up, but joining in so much, asking questions and being so chatty. The link to the Zoom room is in chat. I'm going to close this webinar, and within a minute, I'll be in there. Be warned, this isn't delivery. I'm going to be vaping. Satvir, if you want to come over and join us, you're absolutely welcome to do so.
Cool. All right, I'll see you there for a few minutes, and then
No worries.
I'll get to London. See you in a bit.
Thank you again, everyone. Maybe see you in the other room. Bye.
Bye.